Yo, 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 Big Kish back up in here. I was watching this video and I said, this is interesting. I said, before I continue, let me go ahead and cue it up and react to it. The title reads, "This is the end of an era." So with everything been going on, this is the end of an era and the beginning of a new era. Shout out to I Used to Be Paid. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. But this young man is cooking in this video. I will leave a link in the description. Y'all make sure y'all tap in. He did an amazing job by explaining how this is an end of an era. He's going into like all the rappers who was just like, everybody liked it, them down. They slowly starting to dwindle off. And now we at the beginning of a different era. And yeah, y'all know I'm like holding y'all. Without further ado, let's get it.
These artists could roll out of bed, drop an album, and pretty much take over the rap scene. Guys like Lil Durk, Lil Baby, 21 Savage, Gunna, Future, Travis Scott, Young Thug. These were the names of guys who have basically kind of dominated the rap game ever since 2018, but it feels more and more like their time is up in terms of this just being their era. These artists have been the people who have really dominated.
Now, I'm going to say one thing. Future Future locked in. Future locked in. Future is locked in, man.
Mainstream hip-hop. They've been the ones that have dominated the playlists like a Rap Caviar or any other mainstream rap playlist. These are the artists that have dominated the airways, dominated the radio, if you even listen to the radio or ever took the time to. These are the artists who have been the most impactful of this era, despite the fact that most of them aren't the most dominant in terms of numbers. Some of them are, but a lot of these guys aren't the most dominant in terms of numbers.
I never had on a pair of leather pants a day in my life. Could y'all wear leather pants?
Impactful of this era, despite the fact that most of them aren't the most dominant in terms of numbers. Some of them are, but a lot of these guys aren't the most dominant in terms of numbers. Guys like Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and J. Cole, who are bona fide superstars and have been before this era even started, have had to kind of adjust to what these guys are doing and integrate them into their own work and really follow their lead over this past like almost decade or so now. These guys have been pretty much the flag bearers of rap since around 2018. But I feel like that moment is now coming to an end and that era is done. What's good, YouTube? It's Justice I Used to Be Paying. Today I'm back with another video. And in this video, I'm going to be telling you why this is the end of an era. But before I get into that, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton. From 2018 really up until...
It helps me out a ton. Like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton.
Till right about now, these guys could do no wrong. Like, they just were not missing. Now, of course, they deserve the credit for that because they're the ones that dropped the music. Nobody did it for them. But once they were able to get people on board, there was no looking back ever since that moment. Like, these guys were hitting on such a level that almost everything that they did was money. And you cannot go to a public setting right now that plays rap music and not hear at least one of those names that I mentioned. You can't even really go to any public setting that plays music in general and not hear one of those names that I mentioned. Of course, if you go to like a country festival or like, you know, you go in and listening to like an R.
It kind of started when QC sold their label. Would y'all agree with that, or am I tripping? When QC sold that label, it was like, damn, they had Baby, they had Gotti, it's like stuff just started dwindling out.
R&B night at an R&B place or R&B club, whatever you want to call it. Of course, they're not going to play their music. But I mean, like, if you go to a place that has just like, in general, mainstream, popular music, you're going to hear one of those names that I mentioned earlier. And to make things even crazier, they all feature each other on their album. So if one of them drops an album, you're going to hear at least 3 or 4 of the other names that I mentioned previously. Pretty much every rap album since 2018 has a government-mandated 21 Savage feature. Like, these guys have really just taken over everything. This group feels almost like...
He said government mandated 21 Savage feature.
like a clique or a fraternity of rappers that have dominated the mainstream rap scene.
Yep.
And at this moment, it feels like the tide is kind of turning away from that. You really start to see this shift, though, in how people talk about Lil Baby. Lil Baby, without a shadow of a doubt, is the golden boy of this group. Even if you don't believe he's the best, even if you think 21, Gunna, or whoever else, Lil Durk, is better than him, there's no denying that he was kind of positioned as the golden goose of this group by the media. Like, he was put in that spot as the number one guy going into the future. Like, back in 2020, he was the guy with the rocket strapped to his back who was going super crazy with his music, super crazy numbers, number one album, number one song. Like, he was the next guy in rap. Some people even put him in the spot of possibly being the guy to unseat Drake one day as the most popular rapper in the world.
It's funny how people hit that peak. They hit that peak and just boom. But nobody had a long-lasting peak like Drake. His peak lasted the longest, I'll say, out of everybody. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying like he was like them because Drake wasn't mumble rapping. Drake was rapping, even though he had ghostwriters and all of that, whatever, right? His peak lasted longer than theirs. So it's like, is their stardom money-driven? You know what I mean? Is it money-driven? It's like, I don't know, because I'm comparing it like with lyricists. Lyricists who got that longevity. Shout out to that channel that did that video about delayed gratification. That explains a lot. Delayed gratification explains a lot. That's what Kendrick did. Delayed gratification. He wasn't popping out every 5 minutes. I gotta have this out. Gotta have that out. I gotta supply this microwave era. Nah. Delayed gratification.
Like, he was called the next Wayne or the Wayne of this generation. That's how high people were on Lil Baby back in 2020, 2021. And he has, without a shadow of a doubt, been a hit maker for the last 7 years. Like, that's all he's done is put out hits. But the last 2 albums that he's released have, at best, mixed reviews. At best, mixed reviews. They do. And people still listen to Lil Baby. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he's completely fallen off and nobody listens to his music anymore. But there's no denying that his momentum has slowed massively. Massively.
You can sense it.
People are just not really enamored with Lil Baby like they were in 2020, 2021. They kind of feel a little bit over it at this point. Like, they feel...
if I'm not mistaken, he went to Jay-Z and asked him, could you purchase my life rights for me? This is around the time when QC had sold their record label or whatever. Yeah, I remember. So does that have anything to do with it?
I feel like Lil Baby has about 4 or 5 tricks in his bag, and that's really it. Like, once he gives you that, there's not that much he can do anymore. You don't really see people calling him the Wayne of this generation anymore. Right. And people just aren't as high on him anymore. They just don't feel that same way that they did. They feel like he's gotten a bit stale. And that kind of criticism or that kind of way of thinking for Lil Baby low-key applies to the whole group as well.
I think because that generation is growing up now. They like 30 and life's starting to hit them. You know what I mean? Like, they can't just be I stay with my parents and I'm just chilling. You know what I mean? They like, nah, hell nah. I got to get a job now. I got to pay bills, got to pay rent, car insurance, car note, gas.
Some people feel like it's gotten a bit stale. And the internet, as a result, has kind of turned on Lil Baby. Now, of course, he still has fans. Don't get me wrong. He's not the most hated rapper in the game. But there's no denying that you just don't see that same Lil Baby love anymore. You don't see guys constantly saying, man, Baby top 5. I don't care what nobody say. You just don't see that anymore. This critique of things getting a bit stale seems to kind of be a theme of this group. Like I just mentioned before, Lil Baby gets it. 21 Savage gets it a lot. Lil Durk gets it a lot. And even people have started to give it to Travis Scott. Unfairly, in my opinion, but mostly with the song 4x4. People were saying, bro, it's not 2018 anymore. So all of these guys kind of get this exact same critique. And I don't think it's an accident. I feel like fans feel like some of these guys are just starting to kind of roll out of the bed and just give us whatever. Just give us anything, and that should be good enough just because it's coming from Lil Baby, or that should be good enough just because it's coming from Lil Durk. That's kind of how fans feel that they feel. It's like, no, bro, we're not just going to accept anything. Right. And I know people are going to be mad at me for saying this, but respectfully, Future gave us 3 albums in 2024. That last one, Mixtape Pluto, is exactly what I'm talking about when I say things start to feel a bit stale. There's good music on there, don't get me wrong, but we start to feel a little bit of that repetition, a little bit of that, are you sure you really had enough music to make a
no new ideas? It's like, all right, I'm gonna just give them anything. I'm gonna put a lot of baking soda on it. Put a lot of B12 up in this motherfucker.
full-length project, because some of this stuff really just starts to sound the same. Like, again, I know people are going to be mad at me for saying that about Future, but that's just how people really feel about this group of guys. They feel like sometimes this specific group can be very guilty of sacrificing a lot of their quality to give us quantity. I know that I'm framing this in a way that may sound like I'm trying to say these guys' careers are over or something like that, but that's not what I'm trying to get at here. What I am trying to say, though, is that these acts and the ones that are very similar to them are either going to evolve in the next few years or so and move forward with rap, or just kind of get left behind in a way with this era of rap. Now, I have said that I believe that this era is pretty much done, but we haven't fully moved into the next one yet. I don't really know what the next theme or the next era or the next wave of rap is going to look like for the next 5 to 7 years or so. And I think that we're kind of in the middle of this previous one that I've been talking about for most of this video and whatever the next one is. So there still is time for these guys to kind of spice things up and change things up and evolve with time to be able to move on to this next era. But I do believe that that's going to be a necessity for all of these guys. Right now,
that's going to be a hell of a transition. That's going to be a hell of a transition because they bars got to be up to par. They got to start speaking more clearly. We don't want to hear the mumbling. We want to be able to pick stuff apart. We want them rabbit holes. People want rabbit holes now. Doctor introduced the world to the rabbit holes. Oh, no, ain't no rabbit holes in here, man. Turn that shit off, man.
It feels like the middle class of rap is kind of disappearing. Like, you're either a top dog or you're not. The middle is going away. The middle that was filled with names that aren't blockbuster superstars like a Drake, Kendrick, or a Kanye, but were still big names regardless. Names like a 21 Savage, a Gunna, a Lil Durk. These guys who kind of filled the middle class of rap. It feels like those spots are starting to go away. And everyone's numbers as a whole, just in music really in general, but especially in rap, seem to be kind of down at the moment. And if these guys stay relatively the same, I expect their numbers to reflect that as well. Look at Polo G and Roddy Ricch. These are kind of the best examples of the worst case scenarios for what could happen to these guys. Once upon a time, these guys were grouped in with the names that I mentioned earlier, especially Polo G. He was in the mix with all of those guys. Polo G was one of those guys who was looked at as one of the next superstars of rap, one of the next rising stars, but the combination of really honestly a lack of development plus the fan criticism equaled, well, unfortunately, like his downfall, low key.
I believe behind the scenes, when they get these big lumps of money, it's not being allocated in the right places. So you got the marketing department, you got all these different departments, right? But if you don't have that manager on top of you, like, hey, look, don't be doing this, don't be doing that. I believe that may take a big part in it, of their downfall. You know what I mean? They not utilizing the money the way they supposed to be doing. You know what I'm saying? It's not going into the right places.
Like Polo G on his album Hall of Fame sold 140K first week. And this, in hindsight, was an album that a lot of people really didn't like. Like Polo G really had a lot of hate starting at Hall of Fame. Like that was the moment where everything started to change in terms of the narrative surrounding Polo G. There were rumblings of critiques and criticisms before, but then it just kind of turned to flat out hate after Hall of Fame was released. But that album still did 140K first week up until his next project, which is Hood Poet in 2024. And that album sold 24K first week. Polo G got outsold by Ice Spice in 2024 in terms of first.
Damn. 24K
week numbers.
Woo.
Now, I'm not saying that to say just in a vacuum like this is what happened. There's a whole bunch of context to what happened between Hood Poet and Hall of Fame and, Polo G's arrest and the album getting delayed a few times. But regardless, at the end of the day, no album with a name tied to it like a Polo G should do 24K first week. And
Something
I'm not saying
wrong.
that that's what's
Something
going to
wrong.
happen to these guys. I'm not saying that that's in their future, but I'm just trying to give an example of the change in reality and how fast it can really come. From
Yeah,
2021, where Polo
yeah.
G is looked at as one of the next big things, next young guy to carry the genre on his back, him, Lil Baby, and NBA YoungBoy are going to be the next big names in rap, to 2024, where he's a complete afterthought. Despite Future being over 40 years old, I do believe he will be able to thrive in whatever era is next because he's been
Yeah.
adapting and evolving for over a decade now. And I feel a very similar way about Young Thug. So I'm not necessarily worried about those guys too much. Travis Scott is another guy that I'm not really too worried about as an artist.
Man, I don't know what's up with Young Thug. Ever since he got out, I ain't been hearing nothing. Has he be dropping any music lately? I don't know. I know he better not talk none of that 15 years probation, boy. Woo!
Utopia showed me that he can evolve, and it really showed me that he has so many different things that he can creatively branch out and do, and so many different things in his bag that, again, I'm not too worried about it. Maybe a song will come out here and there like 4x4 where not everyone's convinced, but I'm not too worried about him in the future, at least at this moment in time. But the guys that I am really worried about are definitely Lil Baby and 21 Savage. Now, I would have thrown Lil Durk in this group as well, but I don't think we're going to be getting too much Durk music in the future. But they just
Yeah.
don't seem like the type of artists that will be able to completely like renovate themselves and evolve to what's happening surrounding them. Like, I really do like Lil Baby and I really do like 21 Savage, so I'm still
No, Lil Durk is locked up, ain't he? Yeah, I don't think he gonna be getting out soon.
going to be listening to their music regardless, more likely than not, at least. But if there ever were anybody in this group who I could look at and say, man, I know they're probably going to have a hard time evolving what they do, it would probably be those two. So that means that they will have to find other ways to keep up with whatever's happening and remain relevant. Whether this group of guys completely fall off or some of them fade into the background and become a little bit more niche as artists and a bit more grounded, kind of like the Baby, where, they're still doing performances, still making money. They're just not that guy anymore. Just know that this period of dominance is probably over for these guys. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't move on into the next era and continue to be dominant. It doesn't mean that they can't continue to be a big name. It just means that they're probably going to have to start to bring something newer to the table, something fresher to the table, something where they're showing a little bit more depth or they're evolving a little bit more in order to continue to be one of the biggest names in the genre in the next few years or so. The days of them just kind of rolling out of bed, dropping any old album, whether it was great or just okay, and still being the face of rap caviar and still being the guys whose music is constantly being played in the club and on the radio, I think are coming to an end. It doesn't mean that they can't continue
Yeah.
to do great things and, progress as an artist, but I think that we're just going to be demanding a little bit more from these guys in the
Of course, of course. Kendrick Lamar has set a standard. This is a tough act to follow, especially if you already used to be mumbling and doing whatever you want to do, splurging and just throwing something out there and fans just eating it up. Nah, we need substance now. The people is demanding more. They require more. They're requiring substance now. So he's absolutely right. Shout out to I Used to Be Pay for dropping this marvelous breakdown. You're absolutely correct. I feel the switch as well. I feel the switch as well. I think we in the age of enlightenment and people want more. They want more, definitely. And I feel like those guys that you just mentioned previously is slowly spiraling. Yeah, they're slowly spiraling. These are the ones that's trying to save Drake. Y'all let me know what y'all think, man. Go show I Used to Be Paid some love and like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Big Kish signing out. I'm going, y'all. I'm gonna leave a link in the description as well.